There is a version of this story where Rodri never has to make a decision at all, where he signs a new deal at Manchester City, collects a few more Premier Leagues, and quietly builds toward a testimonial in 5 or 6 years. Comfortable, safe, forgettable, in the way that only success without conflict can be forgettable. That is not the story that is happening right now. Right now, the reigning Ballon d'Or winner, the best player at the 2026 World Cup, the man Pep Guardiola once called the heartbeat of his entire system, is sitting on a decision that 2 of the biggest football clubs on the planet are waiting on. And depending on which way he leans, he could reshape the identity of Spanish football for the next decade. This is the story of Rodri's decision and why it might matter a lot more than a normal transfer. Let's start with what got him here. 6 years ago, Rodri arrived at Manchester City from Atletico Madrid as a solid, unspectacular signing. A destroyer, a holding midfielder who wins the ball back and gives it to someone more talented. That was the read on him. It was wrong. What Guardiola actually built was a football club that runs through one man's brain. Every attack starts with Rodri. Every defensive shape resets around Rodri. When Manchester City lost him to injury for several months, their entire season nearly fell apart, and suddenly the whole football world understood what had been hiding in plain sight. He wasn't a support piece, he was the engine. Then came the individual glory. The Ballon d'Or. Not a striker, not a winger, not one of the players football usually crowns, but a defensive midfielder, recognized as the best player on earth. And then, this summer, he did something even bigger. He walked into a World Cup with Spain and left as the best player in the entire tournament. Not the best midfielder, the best player, full stop, at the sport's biggest event. So here is the problem for Manchester City. Rodri is 30 years old. He has 1 year left on his contract, and he has not signed an extension. In football, that is not a small detail. That is a countdown clock. A player with 1 year remaining and no extension holds all the leverage because the club has exactly 3 choices, and none of them are good if they wait too long. Extend him. Sell him now while he still has value, or risk losing the best midfielder alive for absolutely nothing next summer. And Rodri has made it very clear which way he is leaning. He wants to go home. For a long time, everyone assumed home meant Real Madrid. It made obvious sense. Real Madrid have been searching for years for someone to replace Toni Kroos and Luka Modric, 2 of the greatest midfield conductors the club has ever had. Rodri, stylistically, is the closest thing football has produced to that kind of player since they left. Real Madrid held long-term interest. Reports had them as favorites. It looked, for months, like a formality. Then Barcelona showed up. And not just showed up, they got the green light. Reports emerged that Rodri had given Barcelona his personal approval to negotiate, that personal terms were basically agreed, and that he had reportedly told Real Madrid directly that he no longer wanted to join them. If that is true, it is not just a transfer twist. It is a snub, a public one, to the club that many assumed already had him. So why would Barcelona win a race that Real Madrid was supposed to have locked up? Some of it is timing, some of it is relationships, but look at what just happened at the World Cup. Spain's midfield, with Rodri at the controls, won the whole tournament. Multiple Barcelona players were central to that Spain squad. There is a version of this decision that is not really about 2 clubs at all. It is about Rodri wanting to walk into a dressing room that already feels like the national team that just made him the best player on the planet. But wanting to go somewhere and actually getting there are 2 very different things in football. And this is where the story gets genuinely tense. Manchester City are not simply going to let their best player leave for pennies. Barcelona's opening offer was reportedly around 45 million euros. City's response, according to sources close to the situation, was blunt. They called it derisory, insulting. City reportedly want closer to 80 million for a player of Rodri's level, and given that he is the reigning Ballon d'Or winner, it is hard to argue they are being unreasonable. So now you have a genuine standoff. A player who has picked his club and is reportedly not interested in going anywhere else. A selling club that is not going to be bullied into a discount just because the player has made his preference public. And a buying club, Barcelona, whose financial situation has been shaky for years, trying to convince Manchester City to accept a fee that Manchester City has already rejected once. Nobody in this story currently has what they want. And underneath all of that financial back and forth is the part of this that actually matters for the sport itself. Whichever way this goes, it changes something bigger than one transfer window. If Rodri goes to Real Madrid, he becomes the long-awaited answer to a question that club has been asking since Kroos and Modric started fading. A genuine midfield conductor dropped into a team already stacked with generational attacking talent. That version of Real Madrid is terrifying to play against. If Rodri goes to Barcelona instead, it is almost a symbolic statement. It says the momentum in Spanish football, the culture, the identity, the pull, currently belongs to Barcelona and not their oldest rival. It reunites him with players who just won a World Cup, playing a system built on exactly the kind of control he provides. It is not just a transfer, it is a changing of the guard, or at least the appearance of one. And if neither of them get him, if City hold firm, refuse to sell at a discount, and Rodri simply plays out his final year in Manchester before walking for free next summer, that is its own kind of statement. It would mean the biggest domestic rivalry in world football spent an entire summer fighting over a player that, in the end, neither of them could actually land. That is why this decision is bigger than the headline. It is not really about which shirt Rodri wears next season. It is about who controls the next chapter of Spanish football. Whether Real Madrid finally solve a problem that has haunted them for years, and whether Barcelona can prove they still have the pull to win a fight against their biggest rival when it actually matters. Right now, nobody knows the ending. City want their price. Barcelona want their man. Real Madrid have reportedly already been told no. And Rodri, the player at the center of all of it, is simply waiting for the clubs to catch up to a decision he has apparently already made in his own head. Football does not often give you a story this clean. A player at the absolute peak of his individual power, choosing his own next chapter, while three of the biggest institutions in the sport scramble to figure out what that means for them. So here is the question I want you to sit with. If you were building the next great era of Spanish football and you could only pick one, would you rather have the player or would you rather have the fee that saying no to him gets you? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me which side of this you are on, Real Madrid, Barcelona, or City holding firm and making both of them sweat. I read every single one of them. If this kind of deep dive into the stories behind the headlines is what you come here for, make sure you are subscribed, because this is far from the last decision that is going to reshape football this year. I will see you in the next one.